Wayne Gretzky was traded for pocket change. The greatest player in hockey history, shipped off because one owner needed cash. It's the most infamous mistake in NHL history, but it's far from the only one. Today, we're breaking down the catastrophic decisions that permanently altered hockey's timeline, from billion-dollar blunders to split-second choices that teams have regretted for decades. Some mistakes cost franchises championships, others cost the league entire seasons. A few nearly killed hockey altogether. These are the decisions that changed NHL history forever. The Gretzky trade. August 9, 1988. Let's start with most painful mistake for Canadian hockey fans. The Gretzky trade. Edmonton Oilers owner Peter Pocklington was facing financial trouble with his other businesses. He needed cash, and fast. The Los Angeles Kings owner Bruce McNall saw an opportunity and pounced. The deal was highway robbery. Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player in hockey history, along with Mike Krushelnyski and Marty McSorley, traded to Los Angeles for Jimmy Carson, Martin Gelinas, 3 first-round draft picks, and $15 million in cash. Canadians were devastated. The Edmonton Journal ran the headline, "Gretzky Gone," with a photo of the Great One crying at his farewell press conference. One Canadian politician demanded the government block the trade. They couldn't, of course. Gretzky went to Los Angeles, and hockey in America changed forever. Before Gretzky, hockey in Southern California was an afterthought. The Kings averaged 8,000 fans per game in a 16,000-seat arena. After Gretzky arrived, they sold out every night. Hollywood celebrities started showing up. Tom Cruise, Kurt Russell, John Candy. Suddenly, hockey was cool in California. The NHL expanded to Anaheim in 1993, then to San Jose. Later came teams in Florida, Nashville, Carolina, and Arizona. None of that happens without Gretzky in Los Angeles proving hockey could work in non-traditional markets. One desperate owner's cash grab accidentally created the modern NHL map. The Patrick Roy trade. December 6, 1995. But the Gretzky trade wasn't the only franchise-altering mistake. The Montreal Canadiens, the most storied franchise in hockey, made a decision that would haunt them for decades. After a dispute with head coach Mario Tremblay, star goaltender Patrick Roy allowed 9 goals against Detroit. When he was finally pulled in the second period, Roy stormed past Tremblay and told team president Ronald Corey, "I've played my last game in Montreal." 4 days later, the Canadiens traded Roy to Colorado, along with Captain Mike Keane for Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Ruchinski, and Andrei Kovalenko. The results were catastrophic for Montreal and miraculous for Colorado. Roy immediately led the Avalanche to the 1996 Stanley Cup. He won another in 2001, cementing Colorado as a dynasty. Meanwhile, the Canadiens, winners of 24 Stanley Cups, haven't reached the finals since the trade until their surprise run in 2021, a drought of nearly 28 years. One heated moment between a coach and goalie derailed hockey's most successful franchise for over a quarter century. The Roy trade wasn't just about losing a great goaltender. It represented a fundamental failure of management to handle star players. The Canadiens chose a rookie coach over a future Hall of Fame goalie. They rushed a trade rather than waiting for tempers to cool. And they accepted a package that, in hindsight, was laughably inadequate for one of the greatest goaltenders in NHL history. Montreal's decline was immediate and severe. After winning 24 Stanley Cups between 1916 and 1993, they became irrelevant. The Canadiens missed the playoffs in 4 of the next 10 seasons after the Roy trade, unthinkable for a franchise that had missed the playoffs only twice in the previous 46 years. Meanwhile, Colorado became an instant powerhouse, winning the Cup in their very first season after relocating from Quebec. The Alexandre Daigle draft mistake. 1993. Speaking of draft mistakes, the 1993 NHL draft stands as perhaps the biggest individual selection failure in league history. The Ottawa Senators had the first overall pick in a draft that included future Hall of Famers Chris Pronger and Paul Kariya. Instead, they selected Alexandre Daigle, a flashy forward who proclaimed, "I'm glad I got drafted first because no one remembers number 2." Pronger, drafted second, played 1,167 NHL games, won a Stanley Cup, 2 Olympic gold medals, and made the Hall of Fame. Daigle played for 6 teams in 616 games, never scoring more than 51 points in a season. The Senators gave him a then unprecedented $12.25 million rookie contract, which led to the implementation of the NHL's rookie salary cap. One draft mistake changed the fortunes of multiple franchises and altered the league's entire salary structure. The Daigle selection wasn't just a hockey mistake, it was a marketing disaster. The Senators built their entire franchise identity around him. They featured him in every advertisement. They designed their offensive system to showcase his talents. When he failed to deliver, the organization had no backup plan. It took Ottawa years to recover, building slowly through smart drafting until finally becoming contenders in the early 2000s. The 2004 to 2005 NHL lockout. But individual franchise mistakes pale in comparison to the league-wide disasters that nearly killed hockey. The worst self-inflicted wound in NHL history came on February 16, 2005, when Commissioner Gary Bettman stepped to a podium in New York and uttered 6 devastating words, "It is my sad duty." With that, Bettman canceled the entire 2004 to 2005 season. For the first time since the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic, no Stanley Cup would be awarded. The NHL became the first major sports league to lose an entire season to a labor dispute. The lockout was about implementing a salary cap. Owners insisted they needed cost certainty. Players, led by NHLPA head Bob Goodenow, refused. Neither side would budge. As negotiations dragged on, fans grew disgusted. While millionaire players and billionaire owners fought over money, arena workers lost their jobs. Sports bars closed. Hockey became a punchline. When the league finally returned in 2005, many fans had moved on. TV ratings plummeted. The NHL had to rebuild its audience almost from scratch. The new salary cap system eventually created more competitive balance, but the damage to hockey's standing in the sports landscape took years to repair. The dead puck era. The lockout wasn't the NHL's only self-inflicted wound. The dead puck era of the late 1990s and early 2000s nearly bored fans to death. It started with the neutral zone trap, a defensive system pioneered by Jacques Lemaire's New Jersey Devils. Instead of forechecking aggressively, teams would retreat to center ice and form a wall of players. One forward would pressure the puck carrier while the other 4 clogged every passing lane. It was brilliant strategy, but terrible entertainment. Games routinely ended 1-0 or 2-1. The 2004 Stanley Cup Finals between Tampa Bay and Calgary averaged just 3.86 goals per game. TV ratings collapsed. ESPN, which had carried NHL games since 1992, declined to renew their contract in 2005. Hockey moved to OLN, later Versus, then NBC Sports Network, a channel many fans couldn't even find on their cable lineup. The league's mistake wasn't the trap itself. Teams will always find ways to win, but allowing it to strangle the game. Referees stopped calling interference penalties, so defenders would simply tackle anyone trying to skate past them. Mario Lemieux, arguably the most talented player ever, retired in frustration in 1997, saying the game had become unwatchable. "It's to the point where it's not fun coming to the games anymore," Lemieux said. "There's too much clutching and grabbing, too much interference." The NHL finally fixed this mistake after the lockout by actually enforcing the rulebook. Referees called interference penalties. The 2-line pass rule was eliminated. Suddenly, skilled players could use their skill again. The game opened up, and fans returned. Marketing failures with superstars. Sometimes the league's biggest mistakes involved marketing, or the lack thereof. Alexandre Ovechkin entered the NHL in 2004 as a charismatic, gap-toothed Russian who played with unbridled joy and scored goals at a historic pace. Sidney Crosby joined a year later as the polished, media-trained Canadian prodigy. The NHL had its magic and bird, its perfect rivalry to market globally. Instead, the league squandered this once-in-a-generation opportunity. While the NBA built global superstars out of LeBron James and Stephen Curry, the NHL kept Ovechkin and Crosby largely confined to hockey circles. Ovechkin's pursuit of Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal record, one of the most hallowed marks in sports, received minimal mainstream attention. The league's failure to market its superstars beyond hardcore fans represents one of its most significant missed opportunities for growth in American markets. The marketing failures extended beyond individual players. The NHL consistently struggled to explain its game to casual fans. While the NFL created simplified explanations of complex rules and the NBA embraced personality-driven storytelling, hockey remained insular. Inside jokes, obscure traditions, and unexplained jargon dominated NHL coverage. The league seemed content preaching to the converted rather than expanding its audience. This insularity extended to diversity efforts as well. The NHL was painfully slow to embrace initiatives that might have broadened its appeal. While other leagues actively recruited diverse players and fans, hockey maintained its image as a predominantly white, expensive sport. Not until the racial justice movements of 2020 did the league make significant commitments to diversity and inclusion, decades behind other major sports. Resistance to analytics. The NHL's resistance to analytics represents another major strategic error. While baseball embraced data revolution with Moneyball in the early 2000s, hockey clung to old-school evaluation methods. Teams continued valuing grit and character over measurable on-ice impact. The Toronto Maple Leafs, Chicago Blackhawks, and Pittsburgh Penguins were early adopters of analytics, using data to identify undervalued players and optimize strategies. They won Stanley Cups while traditionalist organizations fell behind. By the time most NHL teams built analytics departments around 2015, they were playing catch-up. The league's cultural resistance to new evaluation methods cost many franchises years of competitive advantage and millions in inefficient player contracts. The analytics resistance wasn't just about team building. It affected broadcasting, fan engagement, and player development. While baseball fans embraced advanced metrics like WAR and exit velocity, hockey broadcasts still focused on hits, plus-minus, and other statistics with limited predictive value. The NHL missed opportunities to educate fans on more meaningful ways to understand the game, further limiting its appeal to analytically minded sports fans. John Scott All-Star Game Fiasco, 2016. The 2016 John Scott All-Star Fiasco exposed the disconnect between NHL leadership and fans. Scott, a journeyman enforcer with 5 career goals, was voted into the All-Star Game through an internet campaign. The league, embarrassed by fans selecting a player known primarily for fighting, pressured Scott to decline the invitation. When he refused, the Arizona Coyotes suspiciously traded him to Montreal, who immediately sent him to the minor leagues, potentially making him ineligible. The backlash was immediate and severe. Fans and players rallied behind Scott. The NHL reluctantly allowed him to participate, and Scott scored 2 goals, was named MVP, and was carried off the ice on his teammates' shoulders. The league's attempt to control the narrative backfired spectacularly, revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of what fans value. Scott's underdog story became one of hockey's most beloved moments, despite the NHL's best efforts to prevent it. Vegas Golden Knights and the Fleury trade. In 2017, the Vegas Golden Knights made history as the NHL's first expansion team in nearly 2 decades. Their inaugural season was magical. They reached the Stanley Cup Finals and built an immediate connection with the Las Vegas community, particularly after the October 1st mass shooting that occurred just days before their first game. At the center of this fairy tale was goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury, a 3-time Stanley Cup champion who became the face of the franchise. Fleury's play and personality made him the most popular player in team history. Then in 2021, after leading Vegas to the semifinals, the Golden Knights traded him to Chicago for essentially nothing, clearing salary cap space for another goalie. The move shocked the hockey world and damaged the relationship between the team and its fan base. Players were reportedly furious. Fleury learned about the trade through Twitter. The Golden Knights prioritized cold business calculations over loyalty and fan connection, teaching expansion franchises a harsh lesson about the dangers of treating players as disposable assets. The Fleury trade represented a new kind of mistake in the salary cap era, sacrificing fan connection for marginal competitive advantage. Vegas saved $7 million in cap space but lost immeasurable goodwill. The move was particularly jarring for a franchise that had built its identity around being different from traditional NHL teams. The Golden Knights had promised to value fan experience and player relationships above all else, then discarded those principles at the first opportunity. And that wraps up part 1 of the biggest mistakes that changed NHL history forever. But we're not done yet. Some of the most shocking blunders are still to come in part 2. What do you think was the NHL's biggest mistake? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more hockey history content every week.